Hey guys, this is Hamid. I'm the owner at Software Pro Group of companies where we sell through different brands, different IT services we sell with a back office in Pakistan and other countries and clients majorly in the United States. Today we have come up with a very important topic. If someone is not sitting in the United States, but they want to set up a company in the United States. I get a lot of questions about that. I get a lot of questions about formation, like what would be the ideal structure of the company, what would be the tax considerations that they always need to keep in mind for the non-residents. And keeping that in mind, the best person I could ever think of is the Scott Letourneau. He's my special guest today, and he's the CEO and founder of Nevada Corporate Planners and Sales Tax System. A quick and brief intro about him as well. Since 1997, Scott has helped over 6,500 clients through this process to connect the dots and launch their US businesses with confidence. And that too with whether you have an e-commerce business or you're selling services that you want to sell in the United States. Now, his passion is to be 3 moves or more ahead of you to help you avoid unforeseen pitfalls from the start of your US expansion, especially at the tax time. And Scott is an expert on the critical expansion foundation strategies, including the requirements for selling on different US marketplaces, including the Amazon and Walmart, expanding consideration with a foreign entity versus a US entity. So this is a very important topic to discuss maybe today as well. Which structure and state are the best for doing business in the US? If you go to the seven-figure agency community mindset in the Facebook, you're gonna see all the questions about which state is best. So we'll be discussing that today as well. And also Scott is very expert in US sales tax responsibilities for non-marketplace sellers like Shopify, and US insurance, banking, finance, and other key elements to your US success. All designed to help you guys protect and grow your US profits. Scott, I wanna keep it maybe longer and longer since I know you since a long time. You have a long list of expertise, but I will stop from here. I would love that if you can tell our audience a little bit more about your expertise, how you have helped companies who are selling services and e-commerce expand in US, and all the value that you have created.
Yeah, thanks, Hamid. Appreciate it. It's great to be with everybody and help you through this important process. I know there's a lot of conflicting information online about this subject, and it's really important because when you start and launch a business or grow, whether you're brand new, you want to take it from a $500,000 to $1 million, $1 million to 5, 5 to 10, wherever stage you're at, the certainty and confidence is really important. And so that's part of the specialty. And I, like you, have done a massive amount of research over the years. And what I've done is, starting back when I formed my company in 1997, I wanted to hire the best to get the best answers. So back then I hired Deloitte and Touche, and Deloitte is a multinational tax firm. At the time, this is over 26 years ago, they were $600 an hour to consult with them on what's called the multi-state taxation rules. And I did this because our industry at the time, we're based in Las Vegas, Nevada. We incorporate in all 50 states. But a lot of people would talk about Nevada, Delaware, Wyoming to U.S. residents. You know, if you live in California, do you have to foreign qualify, pay taxes? And this went down this whole rabbit hole of complexity, multi-state taxation rules. And then I would talk to different CPAs, and probably like you, I was shocked. I would get different answers depending on who I talked to. I figure if you're an accountant, and I talked to 6 accountants, they're all going to see it the same way. I mean, it's the U.S. tax code. Well, the U.S. tax code is very complicated. You get different opinions. In fact, over the last, I remember a few years ago, I hired one U.S. tax attorney just to review a blog post by another tax attorney that might have been about 2 pages long. And I paid $600 an hour to go through word for word. And we found one sentence that was off. That was it. But that impacted how you do your tax returns and everything. So I pride myself on being associated with the best of the best. My email private inbox is related with CPAs, insurance, accountants, professionals, discussing different subjects. How did you handle this? How do you do this? What are the latest in audits? What's coming down the pipeline? So that's what we do differently. And we want to give people the confidence. And I like to approach things from a conservative viewpoint, like here's squeaky clean. And some people, sometimes you can't do squeaky clean. There needs to be a little bit, how do we get this done in this? Because sometimes it's like putting a puzzle together. All the pieces don't fit properly. So if we're going to be on Amazon and then we're selling Shopify, but 95% of our sales are on Amazon and 5% are Shopify, but that triggers sales tax in 20 states, which triggers a big tax burden. How do we get around avoiding that tax burden? Is there a solution other than what the software companies tell you, which is just go ahead and get registered in 20 states? So we like to think outside the box, be very strategic to help people know what you don't know, because a lot of people, the problem in life is, I mean, you may find this, they're getting the answer to the wrong question. And the ability to know which question to ask in the sequence of events that you should be anticipating is very difficult. And for those of you who have been in business for several years, you probably know things now that if you would have known this back when you started, you would have started the foundation differently. We've all gone through that, myself included. So that's a little bit how I got here. The research we've done over the years, we continue to do it on a weekly basis. We dive deep into this so we can help our clients with the latest solutions. And the other challenges in life, life changes quick, right? Now we have AI, changing technology, taxes changing, laws are changing. So everything's a moving target. So we like to stay on top of these things just to help our clients out with the latest information. So to avoid getting blindsided by, could be an IRS thing that comes, 3 years down the road. So that's what we want to do. Is really, it's all about confidence and certainty. So you can build your business, take care of yourself, your family best you can. Right.
Awesome. Really impressive, Scott. And since my home is in New York and Lahore, so I personally represent myself as someone who's Pakistani and someone who's very close to the United States as well. With all of my business I ever did with is mostly United States. So I mentor many CEOs in Pakistan and United States as well. So representing my two homes, United States and Pakistan, what do you suggest? I encounter with many IT companies here who are selling services. I encounter with many e-commerce companies here who wanted to expand their products line to United States. And someone who's sitting in the United States, they always have, thinking that, okay, is that going to be a costly process? Which state to go? How would the tax formation be? Am I going to form the LLC or C Corp or S Corp or etc.? Am I going to be jeopardized by any rules or laws which I don't know, which I'm not aware of? So all these things, sometimes they just require the reaffirmations, and we'd like to hear from you that, okay, just quickly, what would be the ideal structure for formation or tax for somebody who's sitting in the United States and who's a foreigner as well, maybe?
So if somebody's in the US, the basic concept they need to understand is they probably live in a certain state, which creates some type of what we call nexus or a physical presence. So we get calls from US residents say, I live in New York, like a very high tax state, or I live in California. They'll say, well, can I incorporate in Wyoming? And yes, you can, but the question is, do you have to foreign qualify? So those are things we look at US residents. What state are you in? Where do you live, number one? Number two, where's your business? Do you own real estate in a different state? So we work with a lot of real estate investors. So those are the components you take in mind. And a lot of people will have a knee-jerk reaction, almost like any subject in life. And sometimes people get shot in the foot because of this belief system, which is, I want to keep it simple. Now, I'm a fan of keeping life simple, but sometimes getting the best results requires a couple additional steps. And if you do those couple additional simple steps, your level of protection could be magnified tremendously for only maybe a couple hundred more dollars. So for example, in the US, a lot of people by default will say, I should just incorporate my home state because that's where I live. That may make sense in 65% of the times. So they may have other reasons. They're moving out of state. They have assets they've accumulated. They want to make it more difficult for somebody to sue their company and go after them. So these are some factors for US residents. Now, your audience in Pakistanis, they're outside the US. So you have the beautiful advantage of you can pick and choose where you want to put your business. What state do you want to put it in? Is it Delaware? Is it Wyoming? Is it Nevada? Is it a different state? And there's different reasons you'll hear on the internet. And I'll show a couple slides in a moment. We'll go into more detail about what those factors are. But the key thing is, I would say when you go to form the entity, you want to think through not just the entity formation, you want to think through your business. Are you an agency, IT consulting, e-commerce, which platforms? And I know people say, I want to do drop shipping and start in Amazon, totally fine. If I mention Walmart, it may be, there's a big difference between someday I'd like to be there. Oh, and that's part of my business plan the first 12 months. That's a night and day difference in how we approach things. So you want to be clear on what your short-term goals are over the next 12 months and beyond. Then we can look at what's the best strategic approach for you anticipating what some of the problems are. I know that's not very positive, but we want to presuppose. I've been to probably a half a dozen Tony Robbins seminars over the years, done the fire walk 6 times, and he always asks this question, presuppose problems. And he's one of the most positive guy in the world, but he models successful people. And so that's what we like to do is what could go wrong that you're not thinking of? And is there anything we would do differently from the front end as you go through strategically to build your business? Now, obviously, everybody has a certain budget in mind. So those may be some constraints that we have to keep in mind. And then the big question is people want to know is, can I change this later? That's the famous question. Scott, if I start out this way, can I make a change in a year from now? Now, the answer is always yes, with a but. And I'm not a fan of the word but because it's an eraser in language patterns, right? So you look nice, but. I mean, nobody wants to hear that, right? But is an eraser. The challenge here is, what is it going to cost to make the change? What are the consequences? Knowing the costs and consequences, would you do something differently on the front end? That's the ideal question to ask at that point. So those are a couple strategic thoughts to keep in mind as you go through this process to do business in the US.
Perfect. Sounds good. And I've heard a lot of debate going on from the tax point of view as well. Some says that, okay, Delaware, Wyoming, it's tax-free, or you don't have to be, go much complicated. Texas is even better. New York is very expensive. I know like we cannot go through the tax percentage in this webinar, but quickly, what do you think is the best state from tax point of view? From tax point of view, and then is there any resources available where the audience can go and find resources about the tax percentages as well in detail before they take any decision about it?
You're very important. That this is the multi-million-dollar question, right? On the front end, the simple aspect is at the state level. So in the US, we got to keep in mind we have both a state and federal tax system, correct? And I was just having a discussion with a client from Pakistan about this, about US banking, and we were looking up a resource in Florida, and he has an LLC tax as a C Corp for different reasons. Well, Florida has a 5.5% state corporate tax rate. So if we open a bank account in Florida and foreign registered in Florida, is that going to trigger a state tax rate? And he's like, well, I'm going to pay more taxes. Well, that depends upon the income expenses related to Florida. Maybe you're going to have a loss in Florida, so we don't know that yet. So that's an example of something very specific at a state level. Now, on the surface, Wyoming, a very popular state, has no state taxes. And Nevada has no state taxes also, except people think of a commerce tax. The commerce tax in Nevada is designed for casinos, car companies, because if you do over 4 million in sales in the state of Nevada alone, then you have this tax comes into play. If you're under 4 million in the state of Nevada, meaning you did 150 million in your IT business, and you had a headquarters in Nevada, maybe you'd pay a little bit of commerce tax. For 99% of people, it doesn't come into play. So then we look beyond the state tax. Really, the key of all this is federal taxation. As a non-resident, are you engaged in U.S. trade or business? What are the factors that go into whether you do IT is very different than drop shipping, where you have a physical product that transfers title in the U.S., and that's where you get various discussions and differences of opinion, where you can read one blog post that says, As a non-resident, you form a U.S. LLC, you have no U.S. tax responsibility other than an information return on the LLC, or you got to go into look into when do you file a return. There's a tax treaty with the U.S. and Pakistan. So then you look at, well, how does it work with the tax treaty? What are the compliance rules? Because the IRS, unfortunately, has about a 3-4 year lag time. They don't tell you next week, oh, by the way, we saw your plan and you're off track. They're going to wait until the penalties and interest, and they're going to send you a surprise letter, and then you got to figure it out. So we like to avoid that. So we work with CPAs, tax attorneys, and audits on the front end just to avoid some of these subjects and factors that come into play.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Scott. And what do you think about suggested formation type? If I'm an agency owner and wanted to set up an LLC in US versus if I'm a e-commerce seller, I want to sell my products maybe from Pakistan to US, or maybe send all the products to US and then set up an LLC over there. What would be the ideal type?
Well, the first step is we have to take a look at your business and what are your goals with profitability. Now, the purpose of a business is profits. It's not to, lose money, work 80 hours a week and, break even. It's to be profitable. So the first question is, where do you want the profits to go? Do you want them to retained in the US? Do you want them to flow back to your home country, to you individually? Are they going to flow back to your home country to another entity you have in this case, Pakistan, and you pay yourself from that Pakistani company? So those are the first steps to figure out what are we going to do with that. The next steps is to look at what are the types of entities. So if you have an LLC, most non-residents don't know that the LLC can be taxed in 4 different methods. So most people think of a single member LLC disregarded, but that also could be taxed as a C corporation. Now, it could be taxed as an S corp, but non-residents don't fit the shareholder rules. And each one of those has a different operating agreement and formalities based upon court cases to make sure you're protected. So we want to connect the dots on that. And then we want to look at the flow of money, the flow of profits. Then we want to link that to the SS4. Then we want to also link that to the tax returns that are going to be all come together. So internally, we have a massive chart on all this based upon multiple discussions with CPAs and tax attorneys. So we connect the dots. Most LLCs online are managed by members, which we don't prefer because it puts you in a box strategically. So there's always little decision points that come into play that, of course, because this is what we do as our expertise, we're going to have more input on it than for everybody on the outside that just sees, oh, it's a simple 1-page form at the state level. That's all there is. Well, there's a lot more to it behind the scenes. So those are a couple of thoughts to keep in mind as you go through this process and you work with someone.
Great. And finally, respecting your time, I know we are going a bit over time. We thought about 20 minutes. Last question, the important one. Any vendors, any companies, any suggestions you would give? Number one, to set up the LLC, maybe yourself. Number two, to set up the bank account, someone sitting in states or outside the states. And if we have to get more information from you to get more consultancy, more in detail, so anyone who's sitting in maybe outside the United States and they wanted to get your help, what is the best way to reach you back and get you consultancy as well?
Yeah, very good question. Let me show my screen for a moment and I'll give you the next step, the best resource for everybody that can help you out in this situation. Okay, so here's how we can help you out, move forward and launch your U.S. business with confidence. We've been setting up U.S. entities for over 26 years now. And as you mentioned, Hamid, with everything from banking to address, we have utility bills, taxation, all these components come into play. And it's always much easier if we form something from the start the right way versus fixing something. Can we review and consult and fix? We can do that. So what I've done is prepared a brand new free guide that will help go into more detail on these different factors, U.S. taxation. What is the key fundamental question why so many people get U.S. taxation incorrect? And it'll walk you through many of these steps. So if you go to uscompanyformations.com uscompanyformations.com. It'll take you to a page where you can grab this guide, the Ultimate US LLC Guide for Non-Residents. And it's over 18 pages long. It's jam-packed with details, steps, strategies, what you need to know before you pull the trigger and form a US company. Now, if you've already formed a US company and you want to double check a couple things, you definitely want to grab this report. It's go to uscompanyformations.com. The way it's set up through this particular landing page, just leave off the www or the HTTP and just go to uscompanyformations.com. You'll grab our ultimate guide. It will really help you get clarity on what the next steps are to go down this pathway to consider working with our company and what we can do to help you out.
The most common mistake that sellers do, and as a suggestion, as a tip, and as to conclude this webinar, you want to share that with the audience today. Do not do that.
So one of the most common mistakes we see, I'll actually mention two, one for Amazon, one for Shopify. So for Amazon, the US single member LLC disregarded cannot be go through the Amazon tax interview and be the legal entity on the account. Some people will trick the system and fill out the W-9, but that's very bad. So there's a proper way to do it if that makes sense, and it may not always make sense to go that route. Second tip is for Shopify sellers who don't understand sales tax. Sometimes people will just turn on tax collections in all the states and start collecting sales tax when they didn't need to. I actually spoke to a company last year who did over 50 million in sales. They turned on tax collections and they were never registered or licensed in any state to collect sales tax, and were basically committing tax fraud with every state in the United States that collected tax. And that was a big issue. So we got them to one of our resources to get them back on track, get registered, get all that money back to the state. So a lot of people, because it's a little overwhelming when you start on Shopify or Amazon and you start checking boxes, you got to know the consequences. So those are a couple tips to help keep you in compliance. And there's dozens more, of course, when you work with our company for us to keep you on track. So the next step is just go grab our Ultimate US LLC Guide for Non-Residents. Go to uscompanyformations.com, grab the guide. It'll help you keep on track. And if you've already formed a company, it'll be a great checklist to see if you are on track.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. And today it has been a wonderful session. We got very valuable information. In 30 minutes, you've concluded about the formation types, and also the considerations for the tax as well, and a great resource, the Ultimate US LLC Guide for Non-Residents. Thank you so much, Scott. And we may ping you over into the community. Again, your help, your time is very, very, precious for us, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate the opportunity. Everybody have an outstanding day.